perspective what Adam Lanza did when he murdered his own mother and then broke into the school and murdered those children. It's horrific beyond belief. Where do we even begin as Christians to think about this?
And how do you console the families, a couple things. There's so much to talk about. We'll be talking about it in the coming weeks about this situation. I have my thoughts on how schools are going to have to become more secure. You just can't. You just cannot be sitting ducks anymore, and that's what schools have become by this no gun zone. I think they're going to have to allow administration officials to carry, or they're going to have police at the schools at all time. Security. That's my view. I just don't like the thought of killers knowing they can go to a school and nobody's going to be there with a weapon to resist them. But that's maybe a story for another day. I wanted to talk for just a minute about evil. You mentioned it.
That very day, the governor of Connecticut came out and he said, it's interesting, isn't it, that in times like these, the moral categories that we have pushed off the table, they now become the only way. A society that's basically rejected the notion of lasting good and true moral evil. The Connecticut governor came out and said evil visited Newtown today. He was exactly right. True moral, the hideous face of evil.
I believe that, this is my belief, and I don't speak for anybody else here, but I believe that Satan himself went into the body and soul of that 20-year-old, drove to the school and massacred those kindergartners. That doesn't exonerate the person for of their responsibility. But this, to me, it's the only way you can explain this, because if you had someone who was angry at their mother and they were out of control and they got a gun, you could see how, and they were someone given maybe to rage, you could see how something like this domestic act where he murdered his mama could happen.
Domestic violence, terrible as it is, does happen.
Maybe even in
day.
A moment of rage.
It happens in America every day.
That's
we have some framework for that.
Yes. Okay, now here's what I mean by it's satanic, is when you go from there to getting the guns, getting into your car, driving to what you know is an elementary school, breaking in, and start murdering innocent kindergartners. You knew what you knew where you were going. You knew what you were doing. You weren't going Satan went into this person and did these evil things through him. I believe that. I'm not speaking for anybody else. He may have had a mental disorder. I'm not discounting that at all. Sure, he did.
Yeah, that seems certain.
But I'm saying that to someone to consciously do such an evil, heinous act had to come from Satan, because, as you say, it went far beyond the quote norm of what we're used to hearing and seeing.
We don't even, we've seen it all weekend. Saw it yesterday in church, and I was watching Fox News this morning, and Gretchen Carlson, one of the co-hosts there, she began to weep as she talked about what it was like in church yesterday at Christmas time to try to bring together the truth of the coming of Christ and get your hands around the enormity of this evil.
When the Bible, folks, Satan is not a metaphor.
That's right.
All right? Jesus came to conquer sin for us, but he also came in relation to that to defeat Satan. And Jesus viewed Satan, as a real entity. He spoke to him. So I'm saying that's an uncomfortable subject for us to talk about. I understand that, even for Christians. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge when we see something like this is satanic. This is evil of the devil. And he is still and will still be present on planet Earth until such time as Jesus comes to reign.
It's fascinating and sobering to think that when 1 John chapter 3, that when John is writing, he talks about the devil himself as a murderer. He is a killer. Jesus said, the thief comes but to steal and to kill and to destroy. But I am come, Jesus said, that they might have life. We all like the last half of that verse, that Jesus came to give us abundant life, and it's wonderful truth. But that only makes sense in light of the first half of the verse, that the devil, who is alive and well on planet Earth, he comes to steal and to kill and to destroy, and he was at work on Friday morning in Newtown, Connecticut.
We'll talk more about this later. You're listening to the program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. I'm Tim Wildman, and one of the great things about our country, folks, is the fact that we send Christians around the world who live here to share the gospel with others, and that's been a tradition, a hallmark of America since our inception. And I invited a gentleman into our studio, David Leatherman, who's a friend of mine here. I don't admit that without some caution.
The question is, will he admit that he knows you?
I don't know. It kind of works both ways, I guess. You got a point.
You
got a point, Ray.